Now, a lot of conservatives were scoffed at when they pointed at entertainment shows as being one driver of socialism in the United States. But we're getting some documented evidence of this. A recent interview with the DSA co-chair has revealed that Jon Stewart of The Daily Show was one of the entry points to socialism for her. And she is now going on the record and explaining what that means. And so this is a definite "I told you so" that a lot of Americans should be taking warning from. And that is, the culture is extremely critical for political belief formation in this country. That's right, politics is downstream from culture, as the late Andrew Breitbart put it. Before we get into the story, please like, share, and comment at the Becker Brief. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. DSA co-chair Megan Romer appeared on a podcast with David Rebnick, and she revealed that The Daily Show was formative for her shift to the hard left and her embrace of the Democratic Socialists of America. Let's take a look.
You describe yourself as a Jon Stewart liberal. Tell me about your life until 2018. What were you doing? Sure. What was your mindset, and why did it change?
Absolutely true. Got most of my news from Jon Stewart. That was my primary news source. I'd read the Sunday Times and I'd read Jon Stewart, and I did read the New Yorker, and sometimes even for more than the cartoons.
I appreciate that. But what happened? What turned?
So after Hillary Clinton did not win, and I was supportive of Hillary Clinton. I was not a registered Democrat at that point. I was registered independent, and then she didn't win, and I was horrified. I was baffled. I tried to become involved in the Democratic Party. What I ended up involved in was this women's club where you'd have speakers. You weren't actually making any decisions. You were hearing people talk about a book. And that was all really frustrating because I was like, who's doing anything? What are we pushing anything toward? And a friend who was a folk musician said, we are starting this DSA chapter. You should come to a meeting. And I was like, ugh, the socialists. And I was like, all right, well, I'll come to your meeting because we're friends, but I'm not saying comrade. And I went to the meeting, and I was just so relieved they were actually doing something, just anything. They had plans to just do something.
So obviously the 2016 election was very traumatic for her, and she started getting all of her news from Jon Stewart. And this is very interesting because Jon Stewart has been lionized in the mainstream press, and his show has been held up as an example of someone who gets it and is a mainstream voice of reason on the American left. But Stewart obviously has his own left-wing views. It was reflected in the surveys that showed about people who watched The Daily Show. There were about 37% liberal, self-described, and about 1% conservatives. So I guess all of those Daily Show clips, it was basically just people arguing on social media on the American right about Jon Stewart and The Daily Show for the most part. Now, there's no doubt that Jon Stewart is funny, but the appeal of The Daily Show is that it drips with smugness. This is a route to elitism for a lot of these wine moms who just otherwise won't put in the hard work to become educated on topics and actually debate people that don't agree with them, such as conservatives. Rather, they would just rather mock them and have sarcasm and vitriol about them. And that is something that Jon Stewart was a master of. He wielded sarcasm as a weapon. It was critical theory with a laugh track. And this is the result of it. We have a DSA co-chair who doesn't really understand the underlying philosophical principles behind socialism, but she knows the sound bites and the bumper sticker slogans. She can repeat the catchphrases, and she can virtue signal. And that's really all that is required for about 90% of the Democratic Party.
But we do believe in taxing the hell out of millionaires. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what does taxing the hell out of them mean?
Yeah, I don't have a solid, but I think.
But shouldn't you? I mean, if you're the co-chair of the DSA, shouldn't you be more specific than just taxing the hell out of something? What exactly do you mean?
So again, it's democracy, right? And we have to look at what we need to spend and what we need. We don't want to depend on the existence of millionaires because that means people are still getting exploited. So yeah, we need to look at what we need to pay for in the interim, what sort of tax base we need for that to happen, and then and build from there.
They don't need to read Marx like the academics, and they don't have to understand the underlying views that support socialism or the competing views. More particularly, I know that personally because I was in a PhD program for political science and took a lot of Marxist classes, and they conveniently leave out the counter arguments to socialism in the syllabi, and there's a reason for that. It's because there is a long track record of failure for socialism, but socialists don't ever talk about that. They don't acknowledge the horrible things that socialism has brought to humanity. They don't talk about the tens of millions, if not nearly 100 million people who have died from variations of socialism in world history. They don't talk about the crippling poverty or the misery or the oppression. They don't want to acknowledge any of those things, and so they go on the offensive, and that's what critical theory is all about. So John Stewart wasn't wielding intellect, he was wielding humor to achieve the same ends as socialists. And you don't have to really explain socialism. You don't have to support these views openly. It all can be very implicit in who you are attacking and why you are attacking them. And Republicans were beat up on The Daily Show at a rate much higher than that of Democrats. Again, this is an implicit argument that the Democrats are the voice of reason and that conservatives they are simply some loony rubes out in flyover America who don't understand what's going on, and that they're simply bigoted and naive and ignorant. And they're on The Daily Show. They have the intelligentsia who can talk down to everyone and educate us on why we are so out of touch with reality. But in effect, they are constructing a false reality, a bubble, an echo chamber where the left simply talks to each other, and that's what they believe is the legitimate view of politics in the country. So there you have it. Jon Stewart in The Daily Show. It was a gateway drug to the crack cocaine of radical politics, and the DSA co-chair, she embodies that perfectly. So weigh in with your thoughts about the story. We always appreciate hearing from you at the Becker Brief.